come to play. He's the biggest of them all. Step back, 4-3. Phoenix forced a turnover at halfway. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Clock at 10. Adams the off balance. Oh my goodness. 2 on the clock.
Hello and welcome back to the Basketball Fix podcast. It is Beyond the Buzzer. My name is Ryan Tucker, the host of today's show. As always, with me, NBL expert Josh Higgins and Jeremy Dark. Another sick day on the roster, but we've been lucky to bring in Grace Hamilton, sports writer for the Illawarra Mercury. Guys, welcome back to the show this week. Grand Final series is here. Josh, how you feeling, mate?
Yeah, mate, I'm great. We'll have to start having a bit more of a look into these sick days from Mr. Jeremy Dark. And yeah, I know obviously most companies give out 2 weeks of sick leave. I think he's well and truly surpassed that, mate. So we might have to start getting some statutory declarations from him, letting us know that he's not lying to us every single day. But now, obviously, a great opportunity to have Grace on the show, and looking forward to breaking down the Illawarra Hawks and Melbourne United Grand Final series. But how are you, Grace?
I am good. Thank you for having me on.
It's great to have you here, and you have a heap of knowledge from sports with your writing with the Illawarra Mercury and up in Queensland before that. So we're happy to have you here and breaking down the grand final series of the NBL. And maybe we can put Josh on the burners a little bit in this one with his basketball prowess.
Now there's pressure on me to
I'm looking
really
forward to
show
getting
my
stuck.
Exactly. Josh, before we get into today's show, how about you let us know about the free agency tracker and everything else that's going on at the Basketball Fix?
Yeah, well, obviously, plenty going on. We've got the NBL free agency tracker at www.thebasketballfix.com. Now, you can go on there and check out all the latest rumors and everything like that. Obviously, they'll be continuing to drop and are starting to really rumble now as we get into the back end of the season and obviously the NBL free agency period as well. A bit of an interesting one, which we'll just shout out right now. Obviously, Bryce Cotton seems to be either heading to Asia or coming back to the Perth Wildcats, and that's just about it. I know a lot of other teams were rumoured and everything like that, but you can find all those rumours and plenty more at the Basketball Fix website in the NBL free agency tracker. And like I mentioned last week as well, obviously the March charge with obviously the Cancer Council. We're looking forward to being a part of that. We've got a small little team, but if you want to get involved as well, make sure you go and check the links in the description of the podcast and go on there. You can either donate, join the team and get involved, but every little bit does count as well, which is going towards something that has affected majority of the people in Australia. 75 to 85% of people, I'd nearly say, have been affected in cancer at some point of their life. So an amazing cause, and thank you to everyone who's already donated as well.
Awesome. All right, let's get into today's show. And we're going to be talking about the NBL Championship Series. It is Illawarra Hawks and the Melbourne United team that are matching up. Game 1 in the books. Now, Josh, I want to throw to you first on this one, mate. Illawarra came out of the blocks exactly like they have done all season long. A massive first quarter, really intense scoring, and got on top of Melbourne United. But as United are a team of experienced soldiers out on the floor, they worked their way back. And this game was, you could say, a tale of two halves, as it always is. There's two halves in the game. But there are significant things to take out of this first game. How did you see it from the point of view as a kind of a third-party observer?
Yeah, obviously a third-party observer because the Perth Wildcats couldn't get over Melbourne United in Game 3. But it's an interesting game, this one. When you break down a little bit and you look into sort of the play-by-play and the sort of quarter-by-quarter, the first quarter was incredibly close, 29-26 to start the game. And then we started to see the Illawarra Hawks flex their muscles a little bit in that second quarter, outscoring Melbourne 24-17. But after halftime, I think we really got to see the fact of experience coming out. And it was the likes of Marcus Lee. It was the likes of Ian Clark. Obviously, Chris Goulding got going in that second half as well after the chain was sort of released off of him. That second half was incredible. Melbourne outscored the Illawarra Hawks 21-14 in that third quarter, and then it was the run home 32-21 in that last quarter. So obviously seal the deal there as well. Now, there were a number of reasons as to why this did happen, and both teams at certain points of the game as well did see double-digit leads diminish, and obviously Melbourne United was a little bit closer to the end of the game as well, which obviously was a major reason for them winning. But it was honestly a tale of two halves, a bit of swings and roundabouts, and I'm looking forward to breaking down a few individual player statistics and obviously breaking down even Justin Tatum's performance of a coach. But I really want to give this little bit of a praise right now Dean Vickerman is 100% one of the best coaches. I'm going to say he's the best coach in the NBL right now. It's 10 years since his first NBL championship for the New Zealand Breakers all those years ago. He's a guy with pedigree. He's won 4 NBL championships. He continues to find ways. I remember we looked at the start of the season, Melbourne United. I had them actually missing the 6. I just didn't see this roster, the way they were aging. I didn't see anything going in the right way. Well, they've now gone from missing the 6, in my opinion, to making a grand final series and a 1-up. So again, it goes down to his incredible coaching. They have probably got one of the more underutilized or undermanned teams. If you look around the competition, they've only got the 2 imports compared to each other team has got the 3 imports at, pretty much every single club. So he's done an incredible job. And again, we once again doubt him in game 1 of an NBL final series, and he goes out and draws a massive win in front of a huge crowd there at the WEC in Illawarra.
Mate, you are just the king of hot takes. There's been the stuff about Melbourne United, as you alluded to, the Cam Oliver into the All-NBA team, Perth going to the finals. So many things that you're just so cold on this season, and it's filling my pockets. It's fantastic. Now, Grace, as a new resident to Wollongong in the Illawarra area, you've gotten behind the Hawks here, and something that we've spoken about off air, not only in this constellation, but the whole Basketball Fix team, is how Chris Goulding has essentially put the team on his back this season in multiple games, hitting those threes under pressure and really taking United to the next level. In this game, Illawarra shut him down in the first half. How important is it for Illawarra in kind of the series in general to have the clamps down on Chris Goulding?
Yeah, I mean, well, there is a lot of strong feeling between Chris Goulding and the Hawks and the fans, as we've all seen those beautiful shirts that have been printed off and the flop count that's taken to the courts. So there's honestly, you can't even hide it at this point. But
No.
as you say, Chris Goulding shut him down in that first quarter particularly and forced 2 fouls quite early, which as a spectator, you're looking at that and you're thinking, this is great. Have to take him off, and you've got the big threat on the sidelines now. But I don't think the Hawks capitalized on that the way that they should have. As you mentioned just before, 29-26 first quarter, that could have been a lot greater of a difference than 3 points when Chris Goulding, the king of 3 points, is sitting on the sidelines with 2 fouls.
Yeah, well, I think there's a few things as well there which we'll break down with Goulding. And one thing I think you bang on as well, it's incredibly hard to keep a guy like him down for a whole entire game. So he shot 4 of 10 on the night, finished with 15 points. You mentioned those 2 fouls early. Well, those 2 fouls were the only 2 fouls of the particular game. They didn't somehow find to get him in the right situations. He's an incredibly smart player. We saw him against the Perth Wildcats in game 3 of that series, where he had the 3 fouls early on, basically lost his cool, and then came back out and started dominating and throwing in 3-point shots. It might have been game 1, actually, correct me if I'm wrong there, but was just an absolute dominant force. And we see him once again come out in this particular game in the second half, hit a few shots. And I know, Sam, I'm going to give him a quick little shout out, but it's also a bit of a clip as well. He's speaking about, Goulding this and Goulding that. Mate, shut the hell up. He's just killed you in that last quarter there, mate. So we'll chip you there. I know he'll love listening to that as well. Massive shout out to the Hawks Hangout. Go check him out. But he got going in that second half, and that's what Chris Goulding is. He doesn't need much space, he doesn't need much time, and he doesn't need much opportunity, but he can really affect a game in so many ways. So great point there, and I think it's going to be a really big key focus for the Illawarra Hawks come game 2.
Yeah, I was also sitting there watching the game and having, though, it felt like that Illawarra almost were trying to get him into those situations where they could draw a foul, and it seemed like a coaching kind of movement. And I'm seeing exactly like you said, Grace, like, this is fantastic. One of their most dynamic scorers and most important players on the court now has to go to the bench. And, the first foul was within 15 seconds or something. It's amazing. And I'm, as a Hawks supporter, I'm like, yes, great. We're going to have a great game in front of us here. But that guy just kind of, I don't know how he does it. He just gets free. He moves around. He sidesteps. He's just such an athletic player, despite him, being in the league for so long. Grace, what is it about Goulding that kind of scares opposition teams, do you think?
Well, I'm someone who actually didn't start following the NBL until midway late, the start of the NBL 24 season. So it's only been a year and a bit for me. And he came in straight away and he immediately, was a threat in my mind as a fan. And I never am going to have to see him, really. It shouldn't scare me like he does. But I think it's the fact that we've all seen, he brings the ball down and he can have hands in his face and he puts it up without a worry in the world, and it just lands. It just falls. And it almost seems as if he's not afraid to shoot over anyone. He's not afraid to shoot in any situation, and he's not afraid to miss. So, you can try all you want to shut him down, but he's not going away, and we saw that.
Yeah, and I think also as well, we speak about the offensive end of the basketball so often, and you're trying to put Chris Goulding in these situations where, there's that little bit of chance that he may pick up some fouls. Well, I think this is nearly the most impressive statistic from Chris Goulding's season so far. He's currently ranked 22 in essentially defensive rating in the NBL this year. So MP 40, opponents' points allowed per 40 minutes when a certain player is on the court. When Chris Goulding's on the court, Melbourne United are only averaging 89.2 points per game. So I know that still seems like a high number, but the way that the league has changed over the last couple of seasons, 89 points is still a relatively good number when we've got teams averaging over that 100 points per game margin. So really, really good defensively. He's helping the structure. It was always back in the day, the sort of Luka Doncic sort of effect. You go at Luka, you go at Chris Goulding on the defensive end because it's an easy way of getting some cheap points. So yeah, he's been an absolute superstar this season and for such a long period of time, and I don't think he's done yet in this grand final series.
Especially since he wasn't even a team high, 15 points. You could look at that sometimes and think that's average for him, and yet he still had a huge presence.
Yeah, 100%. And that's kind of where he is at that kind of player, is like, no matter what his stats are in the box score, hasn't had an effect on the court for the team. And it frightens me as a Hawks supporter and as a supporter of not Melbourne United. That's like, this dude's gonna eat your team up alive, no matter if it's scoring baskets or just pushing the team over the line. It's fantastic. Grace, another guy that had a big impact on the floor, and this time not for Melbourne United, but for Illawarra, Toddy Blanchfield. Mate, the veteran showing up when the time his ticket was being called. One of the better scorers on the team for this game, considering how Trey Kell and Tyler Harvey kind of weren't right there. Can you give me a bit of insight into your aspect as a follower of the Hawks and being in the area? Todd Blanchard, what does he mean to this team, and how exciting is it to see him still producing at this level after all these years?
First of all, I get major dad vibes from Toddy Blanchfield. He gives me just positive vibes all around. I'm pretty
He's
sure
younger than me.
Well, I didn't know that, but
I think he is.
Yeah. Do we want to do the research? Do you want to know?
I'm searching it. I'm searching it right now. Yeah, he is.
I mean, I think he's also introduced his third kid in a couple days or something. He mentioned that, so that's real dad vibes. But he fits into the team so nicely because of his veteran status. I thought it was 14 seasons. Someone else said it was 16. That is a long time to be playing at such a high level, and it's a cliche to be aging like fine wine, but that's genuinely all I can refer it to, really. The only thing he doesn't have is a ring, and I think we'd like to give him one. That's for starters. But he puts in so much work at trainings. If he's not getting his 5 threes in a row, whatever it is, to finish off a set, he stays for ages to get it. He, as a veteran, he could walk off early and no one's going to want to question him. But he puts the work in, and he knows that he needs to, have as much effort as anyone else on the court there. But as you say, he came in, had a huge impact. I think it was 13 points. You can't dispute that as crucial in a game like this where your starters didn't play like starters. That might sound harsh, but, that's the truth.
Yeah. Josh, we spoke about on the show last week about the bench, and you had some pretty what are we going to call it? Pretty harsh calls on the bench rotation of the Hawks, and some thoughts about how it could be detrimental to their success. And you know, from reading the notes and from us talking before the show, you're ready to double down on this.
Yeah, mate, I'm 100% ready to double down because Grace speaks about the starters there not pulling their weight, and that's 100% a fact. But it's also the case that when Justin Tatum went to his bench in this particular game, they didn't really across the board, one, probably get the opportunity, but two, capitalize on their opportunities. So got the box score up here. Outside of Will Hickey and Todd Blanchfield, no one else stepped up. And when you mix that with the fact that Tyler Harvey had a poor game, Trey Kell had a poor game, you'd probably say Wani Swakala-Bullock had a pretty poor second half. Sam Froling was nowhere on the defensive side of the court and also the rebounding department as well. And Mason Peatling played 8 minutes. And you sort of look across the board and you go, well, Justin Tatum and everyone in the NBL has been speaking about how good this depth is. This depth is just unbelievable. 10, 11 men deep and everything like that. Well, what did I say last week, Ryan? I said if you don't nail your rosters down sometimes to those 8 or 9 man rotations, you sometimes get a little bit lost because you're thinking, oh, wow, I've got all these extra guys down the bench. Okay, Tyler Harvey's not playing well. Let's bring someone else on. And yeah, a Will Hickey worked in this particular game, but none of these guys have played in an NBL Championship series. And that's a massive factor when we're looking at it's not just another game. I know players all the time will sit there and tell us, oh, it's another game, another moment, everything like that. It's not. This means a lot. Every shot means a lot. You hear it from the crowds. Every time there's a missed shot, it's not a, nothing. It's it's just, and you feel that, just as much as when you make a big shot, you feel that as well. So I was disappointed in terms of looking at the whole depth and the whole team's rotation. And I think I actually started to question Justin Tatum slightly as a coach. I know he's done an incredible job, and I'm not going to take away any credit of that at all. But Sam Froling is the one that I want to hone in. I did it last week as well. He's a confidence player. So sometimes you've got to ride with the poor little lapses in judgment because you know what you could potentially get on the other end of it. And for him to see 26 minutes in the first basically 3 quarters and be pretty much benched for the end of the game in the crucial moments, it doesn't do anything good for his psyche, for his mental sort of side of the basketball. So I don't know. I've got some serious questions about this team in that sense. I know Darius Days is still building as he's coming back from that hamstring injury as well, where he had a month off. He's another crucial piece, but I don't know. There just seems to be a bit of a thing that when this team starts losing, one bloke drops their head, a second bloke drops their head, the third bloke drops their head, and you've got 5 players on the court. If 3 or 4 of them have dropped their heads, against Melbourne United in particular, that's basically series over.
Mate, you're off your rocker. Okay, so the two guards had a pretty poor shooting night, but you got Will Hickey coming in. He was one of the best players on the court. Darius Days, 18 minutes, smacking him down from 3 and lifting the game. You could, like, when Illawarra were effectively almost down and out, there was no crowd involvement. Darius Days hits a 3. This team is built on their depth and their bench, and I think, like, they probably played the least amount of minutes that they've played all season in this game. And there were guys like, I'm just bringing the game up here. Greeder got 13 seconds. H.J. Lee, 7 minutes. Lockie Aldrich, 4 minutes 20. So their rotation was severely crimped. And that could have been, I think, something that mucked them up a little bit with their flow and the way they're used to playing the game. Tyler Harvey and Trey Kell, they're not playing 30 minutes week in, week out. I think this team is built around their bench, and it's what has driven them to this spot all season long. Their problem was they were missing open shots early in the game, in the second and third quarters, and they couldn't get it back because Melbourne are such a great defensive team and they're a great offensive team. The score ended up 8 points the difference. It wasn't an 8-point game. When you take away all the garbage time fouls and the extra points, it's probably a 4 to 6 point game. 2 more shots or 1 shot each from Harvey and Kell, and this game is tied and it's going possibly to overtime. I think you're taking way too much out of this and you're not giving credit where credit's due for the bench unit that have driven Illawarra to this spot all season long.
Coulda, shoulda, woulda though, mate, because the Perth Wildcats could also be in a grand final series if Chris Goulding didn't get fouled in that last possession, if the goaltending call was counted, if Ian Clark's travel was
But they're
counted, if
not.
Benny Henschel actually got fouled. We can sit here and talk about minute little things in garbage time. The fact of the matter is they lost by 8 points. They didn't lose by 4 points, by 2 points because of garbage time fouls. They lost the game after being up by double digits going into half time. And that's the serious concern. I look at Melbourne United. I trust one person on Melbourne United's bench more than I do on anyone on the Illawarra Hawks bench. That's Ian Clark. Ian Clark finished this game, and he's had an incredible playoff series. Finished this game with 13 points, the 4 rebounds, the 4 assists, and also the 2 steals as well. That's the guy who I am going to put all my baskets in from a bench perspective. Now, you add that with Marcus Lee as well, who had an all-time career game in the NBL, due to Sam Frolling's lack of ability, due to potentially even Mason Peatling early in the game. You know, when you're coming off the bench as well, they played that real small ball lineup. Well, he was just too big for the likes of Darius Days and the likes of obviously Lockie Aldridge in his short amount of time. He's too fast for a Todd Blanchfield. There are little matchups in which you probably said at the start of the series, maybe that's where Illawarra Hawks have got that little bit of a sort of advantage. But as this has gone on, and I know it's only been one game, and I understand that there's going to be some adjustments and everything like that, but this is all we have to look off. Melbourne look like that they are absolutely playing out of their skin. Dean Vickerman is coaching really, really well, and he's found the little weak spots in their team and turned them into positives. You'd say Marcus Lee was a weak spot, looking at the whole season that has been with Sam Froling dominating them, looking back to last season in the semi-finals where Sam Froling dominated them. He's turned that now into him being benched. Like I said, the mentality and the psyche of Sam Froling probably sitting on the bench as well, even when he's on the court in game 2. And Marcus Lee looking like the finals MVP of this particular game. So there's a lot to take out of it. And again, I go back to this every single time. It's only one game, but I have some questions about the way Justin Tatum's coaching and also this not lack of depth, but also I think lack of consistency that we're seeing on the big stage with some of these guys.
Grace, I touched quickly on HJ Lee there, but he's a guy that maybe you thought should have got some more minutes and some more action and could have possibly helped the team to get further in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what did he play? 7 minutes, and he still had 9 points. And shooting at 100%, you know, that's near impossible in basketball, or at least from what I've seen this season. It's an incredible feat. So I don't necessarily understand what the mentality was with taking him off and not giving him more minutes when, you know, he's on such an absolute heater and only 1 turnover. Because to be honest, I know he had 2 fouls, but I actually don't care if you've got 2 fouls. If you're shooting that hot in an important game like a grand final series, I think you deserve to stay on until worst case scenario you foul out and your job is done.
Yeah, definitely. So Josh, I want to before we kind of wrap up the game 1 review, let us know your unlikely hero from this one.
Yeah, unlike Lee hero, obviously Marcus Lee, like it was just incredible. I think we haven't seen this sort of game from Marcus, I'd nearly say ever. You know, he's always flirting around with either the big rebound game or the big block game, but we don't really see him put together a double-double of 14 points and 15 rebounds with also the 2 blocks and 7 from 7 from the field. Now, what he does to the Illawarra Hawks is when they play this small ball lineup, like I mentioned earlier, it's very easy for a Matthew Dellavedova or an Ian Clark in this particular game to throw the ball near the ring and he's always going to finish it. And that's where it's quite dangerous because he's quite an aerobic athlete. Like he's 7'1". He can get up and down the court very good. Like he gets up and down the court better than the majority of the 7-footers that we have in this league. And he's aerobic on the defensive end. He doesn't too often get caught in, you know, some switch defense where at the end of the day, he's isolated. You know, it's always that man down sort of mentality when a big gets sort of swapped onto a guard. You know, it's either going to be a step back 3-pointer or they're too fast to get around him. Well, Marcus Lee moves incredibly well. And he was massive for this particular game. He stretched the Hawks defense really, really thin. And if they can build on that going into a game 2 back at home in Melbourne, mate, this could be the difference maker in this particular series and obviously game 2 as well.
Yes. Okay. Well, let's take a quick break. We come back and discuss that exact thing. Game 2 coming up on Wednesday night, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, team, it is time to If I can get the right graphics. There we go. Game 2 preview. Now, I was surprised. I don't rarely look, considering I write about the games, I didn't really look about when they were going to be played. Saturday, Wednesday, Sunday, Wednesday, Sunday. So, like, quite a lot of break between these games. I don't know whether it's beneficial for either team, really. I'd like to see them played in a little bit more succession, but it is what it is. And we're heading to a game 2 at John Cain Arena, where Melbourne have historically been a very, very strong team. But the win they got against Illawarra, they played 3 games during the regular season. The win they got was at the Wynn Entertainment Centre, if I'm not mistaken. And Illawarra picked up the win at John Cain. Game 2, there's a lot on the line. If Melbourne win, they go up 2-0 in the series. If Illawarra can get back the win, they retain, you could say, the home court advantage with 3 of the remaining games, 2 of the 3 remaining games at Wynn Entertainment Centre. Josh, what is it going to be important for Melbourne United going into game 2?
Yeah, well, I think the most important thing from a Melbourne United perspective, where I think the Illawarra Hawks need to sort of have a bit more of an emphasis on, is the rebounding count. Like this particular game, I know we speak about rebounding, and a lot of people sit there and they go, "Oh, what does it really matter?" Well, Melbourne United out-rebounded the Illawarra Hawks 54-39. Now, when you go a little bit deeper into that as well, they also won the offensive rebounds 14-8, and from that, Melbourne United scored 22 second chance points to only 11 from the Illawarra Hawks. And 9 times out of 10, they are the easiest little shots, little putback shots and everything like that. You're in close. It's very hard to defend. If you do miss, you're probably going to the free throw line because an opposition player has fouled you as well. Now, it comes down to a couple of things. It comes down to motivation, it comes down to determination, and it comes down to a bit of a heart and a bit of will. And that is exactly what Melbourne United had a bit of an emphasis on in game number 1. So obviously we mentioned just before, Marcus Lee, 15 rebounds. You had Delhi with 7 rebounds, Jack White with 9, and Tanner Krebs with 5. They were the leaders for Melbourne United as well. Matthew Dellavedova, he basically 100% solidifies what I'm trying to talk about. It's the heart, it's the grit, and it's the determination to get the boards, to give your opposition, to give your own team another chance of scoring a possession there as well. So I'm excited to see, obviously, the adjustments that Illawarra make in game number 2, because it was such a big factor for them. And, I don't think they've got the most amount of, depth at the center position and a lot of size as well. But Grace, you got a couple of thoughts on maybe how they can look at to sort of challenge Melbourne United on the rebounding end from an Illawarra Hawks perspective?
Yeah, I mean, drawing from points we talked about earlier, I think it's pretty simple. Go big, bring Froling on when it matters the most. When you've led pretty much the entire game while he's playing, and then all of a sudden there's this momentum shift and you've taken him off, have the trust to put him back on. And he's dominated against Melbourne United, as you say, for the past 18 months, every time they've come head-to-head. NBL media themselves has spoken about it. If they're picking up on it and they're putting it in their podcasts, I think we have the right to also mention it. Yeah, I just think that's the key. You've done it as in Justin Tatum, if you're watching. You've done it all season. You've trusted him to play through the game, and I think this is the most important time to continue that.
Grace, the Illawarra Hawks finished first in the league in rebounds per game in the regular season. Melbourne United was second. If you see Melbourne coming into this one and once again trying to dominate down low and dominate the boards, do you think Illawarra should match them with not only Froling on the court, but Froling and Days and maybe it's Blanchfield or Peatling or somebody else, or even maybe Dan Greeder in there just to create some space around to get the rebounds? Do you see that kind of adjustment for the Hawks, or do you think they should keep to their structured rotations that they have?
I think if Days is fit enough to play some more minutes, I know it looks like Tatum's been doing that the last couple of games, bringing him into a more consistent rotation with in those 20 minutes. Hopefully it's not rushing it, but through the season he proved himself as quite the handy rebounder. Getting up there, around that 10 rebounds per game, even with playing 15 to 20 minutes. So I do think there's something to be said about going bigger rotationally and with those more minutes. But when you mention Greeter, I think he's more of a defensive player, if anything, and that's his key thing, to come in and, you know, give the effort, give the energy. And we saw the energy in the game 3 as well, and in a different sense. But I wouldn't focus too heavily on putting all your bigs down there and trusting them entirely, because we also can't guarantee that Marcus Lee is going to come out with another incredible game like that. So I think Tatum needs to find the balance between what he's been doing and then counteracting what happened in game 1 without making all of your decisions based on a past game.
Josh, Melbourne scored 22 second chance points in game 1. How are they going to? Do you think that's a thing that they're going to try and continue to do, or can Illawarra inhibit that in some aspect?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one, mate, because when you look at, obviously, some of the statistics from the season, the Illawarra Hawks led the NBL in second chance points. They averaged 15.2. The next best was South East Melbourne with 13.9. So they were actually the best team in the competition when it came down to, like you said, rebounding the basketball and then obviously turning that into quick points as well. But where obviously we saw the discrepancy was the fact that Melbourne United on the opposite end of the court are the best at not allowing their opponents to score easy second chance points. They only average and allow 11.4 second chance points per game, which is a league high. So you've got the number one team in terms of getting them and scoring them against the number one defensive team in terms of stopping them. Well, that's where Melbourne United obviously turned that into a positive for them. They stopped the Illawarra Hawks and having those cheap, easy shots inside, especially in that second half, and turned that on their opposition, on their end, into quick, easy baskets as well. And it takes a little bit of momentum out of the game. You know, you look at a game in like the Illawarra Hawks in game number 1 where they're hitting some big shots and getting the crowd going. Well, an offensive rebound and a little tip in, it diminishes the crowd so quickly because it's just a lack of care. It's a lack of, you know, attention to detail, a lack of determination, like I mentioned before. And the fans ride everything, and especially in a championship series where the Illawarra Hawks and the Wollongong area have been starved of success for such a long period of time, they are riding everything right now. I've seen crazy shit going on. I know you guys are both bandwagon supporters. This is your first year supporting an NBL team, and all of a sudden it's the number one supporting team in the NBL. But I've watched this club for a number of years, and sorry, Grace, I know you're not used to all this sort of criticism right now, but it's just a joke. But what I'm trying to get at right now is...
I know I'm not a bandwagon.
Well, that's easy. At least you've copped it on the chin. But at the end of the day, they are just starved of success. They are really enjoying this run so far. And every little thing which doesn't go their way, it just heightens, especially at the WEC. So it's a little key area I think the Illawarra Hawks need to look at and just get back to basics. I think they've had that one game now to settle into the environment, the sort of pressure and everything like that. And it's probably going to do them better going into game 2 and etc.
Josh, it feels like sometimes you forget that I control your microphone. I can mute you at any second and take away your bullshit.
Well, no one will listen to the show then, mate, if that's the case.
I think Grace and I are doing a pretty good job right here on the other side. Get Jez back.
I mean,
I'm not saying that. That wasn't the point.
With your bandwagon comment, I mean, it is talk of the office at the Illawarra Mercury. The town is quite fickle when it comes to whether we're supporting the Hawks or not. So I guess, you know, when you're winning, it's easier to support them.
I thought you were going to say
100%.
bandwagon supporting with Josh and the Adelaide 36ers, but we don't have to visit that one right now.
Sorry, no, you won't catch me supporting Adelaide for a long time.
Josh, one of the funniest things that kind of happened, or funniest, but most intriguing things that happened on our the Basketball Fix podcast Instagram account just a few weeks back. You got Jack White to give a shout out to the Basketball Fix, and then he went out and had a disgusting game with a couple of missed free throws right at the death, and then we put up a great meme bag in the shit out of him, and copped a lot of criticism from people online there about the way, but it's all in good nature and all good fun. It's about the game. You you think that there could be a possibility for Illawarra to try and attack him when he has the ball? Just he's down on confidence at the moment. His shot is not looking great. Is it maybe an adjustment that Illawarra can make to try and attack him a little bit more, both with and without the ball?
Yeah, well, I'll just clear up a few things here. Obviously, massive respect to Jack White, but if you have a performance like you did in Perth in game number 2 there, where you were basically jacking him up and trying to get him off the backboard, I'm going to call you out. I love you, Jack, but I'm going to call you out. And we caught a lot of shit on the social medias, and I actually made that meme after he airballed the free throw in the grandstand. I was on CapCut trying to figure out what one I can do. I've got my phone up to my ears. I'm watching the game. I'm getting all excited. I'm yelling. I'm screaming, all sorts of stuff. But cop that on the chin, mate. It's all well and good. It's all in good nature and everything like that. But I think there's a bit of a method here. And we saw it in the NBA and everything like that with the old Hacker Shaq back in the day. Obviously, Shaquille O'Neal, one of the greatest players of all times, for the life of him, couldn't shoot free throws. And for whatever reason, it probably goes down to his incredibly disappointing and poor shooting form. But it's a method that really won teams and opposition teams the game later on in the piece and kept it close as well. Now, I think you can do the same thing with Jack White. He's 100%, like you said, low on confidence. In game number 1, he went 1 of 4 from the free throw line. And probably the thing that's most interesting and pisses me off the most is, for whatever reason, he couldn't hit a free throw, but he hit a 3-point shot in that semi-finals against the Perth Wildcats. Well, so this game, in game number 1, he goes 0 of 6 from deep. Why couldn't you do that in game 3, Jack? I'd be sitting here talking about the Perth Wildcats in a grand final series, but I think he went 4 of 5 in that particular game. So piss off in that little aspect as well, mate. But I think this is a method they can adopt because, one, you're sending him to the line. And the most important thing, especially on the stretch, is having some little breaks here and there. And it's always great when you go to the free throw line. It's a 45-second break, essentially. You play 10-minute quarters. Having that 1 minute of rest and recovery is huge. You send him to the free throw line. He potentially misses both. You get the ball back. You haven't really done anything too bad. Now, it's the way you do it is the scary part. Obviously, unsportsmanlike fouls are very prone in the NBL, and especially with the FIBA basketball system, sometimes you obviously can give away an unsportsmanlike 2 at the basket, and then they get the ball back as well, which is not what you want to do. But you want to continue to keep this low confidence going for Jack White, because if you keep him out of the game, it's a massive help for the Illawarra Hawks in terms of obviously Sam Froling a little bit low on confidence. Well, Jack White is doing the exact same thing because you know what he can produce when he's at the peak of his powers. He's a 20 and 10 guy pretty much. The start of the season, he came out like an absolute hell on fire and was just absolutely incredible. So you got to keep him in this weird headspace. You got to keep the confidence down. And I think the Hacker Jack method may be the way of doing that for the Illawarra Hawks.
Grace, there's been a lot of talk about the Illawarra Hawks free throw percentage throughout the season, especially on the Hawks Hangout, which you are on as well, part of the Basketball Fix podcasting network. What do you take from this, from Josh's attack on Jack White and the Hawks' own free throw percentage this season?
Well, I can't deny that we were worse all season. Look, it's one of those things you just got to own. And even in the game, talking about game 1, I mean, Melbourne shot 68% from the line, and we shot 67%. So if we're gonna use that approach against Jack White, I think they can safely use it against us as well. Look, every time we go to the line, I have to look away. Yeah, look, there's really not much I can say about this. And the other thing it's funny you mentioned Shaquille O'Neal. Wasn't it in like the 94, 95 series when all of a sudden he could make his free throws in the finals? So let's just, as an Illawarra Hawks fan, I'm kind of praying that he doesn't pull one of those moves because I'd prefer him not to make his free throws when they matter.
Yeah, I can have Sam Froling making his free throws instead in the final series. That'll make us happy.
How about all of us make them, or just one? Just one. You know what? I'll take one person with 100% from the line, and I'll go reward myself with a cheeseburger. I'll even pay for it.
Hopefully it's Dan Greeter. He has 1 or 2 free throws and has a bit of a game. Maybe that might be the way of doing it. But I can't see Tyler Harvey going 10 of 10 or Trey Kell going 9 of 9 or anything like that. But yeah, it's a great point. I think it's hurt them all season long, and it's going to be interesting to see. Hopefully Jack White starts hitting those free throws, and we can earn a bit of credit back with Melbourne United supporters.
All right, guys, let's take another quick break. Come back, put our money where our our mouths where our money where our mouths are. Try
Money
and
where our
predict.
mouth is, mate. Come on.
Yeah. Hey, and I work with betting. That's great. Look forward to game 2. Maybe make some bold predictions about what we think would happen, what the teams could essentially look like, and then maybe some predictions for the series in general. Okay, Josh, I want to go with you first, mate. What do you think, just in a broad overview, how will this game play out? What's the narrative, and who do you think will win?
Oh, well, I think it's pretty easy after the shit talking I've been doing on the Illawarra Hawks that I obviously think the Illawarra Hawks are going to win. I'm obviously joking. I think Melbourne United are going to win this series, mate. And it's for a number of reasons. And the key stat, and I had a bit of downtime at work today, as I always do, and I went back and had a bit of a look at the last 10 NBL Championship series. Now, 8 of the last NBL Championship series, without the exception of the last 2, whoever lost game 1 in those series went on to winning the series. So it's sorry, that's not right. Hang on. Whoever won, going on the fly right now. Whoever won game 1 in 8 of the last 10 series went on to win the series, is what I should be saying. So if you win game 1, you've got an 80% chance over the last 10 years that you will win the whole series. So the only 2 exceptions to that rule are the Tasmanian Jack Jumpers last year, and then the year before that, the Sydney Kings. They both lost game 1 and then went on to win the NBL Championship series. So record and all that sort of stuff and history and everything like that does say right now that Melbourne United are in the box seat to obviously win the NBL Championship. And it all comes down to game 2. If they knock off the Illawarra Hawks in game 2, the series is done. They've got 3 games to close out a series. And closing out a series is by far the hardest thing to do, because from a team with basically nothing to expect with them, they can do whatever they want. Let's just say the Illawarra Hawks are down 2-0 in this series. They are incredibly hard games to close out from a Melbourne United perspective, because the Illawarra Hawks will do whatever they possibly can and will just throw absolute shit to the wall and see if it sticks. And that is as simple as it is. But for me, there's a couple of things. And I know this is going to sound stupid because the Illawarra Hawks finished on top, but I think throughout the playoff series so far, and probably the back end of the season, Melbourne United have been a far more consistent team. And there comes down to a number of reasons. I know against the Perth Wildcats, they showed glimpses of obviously having some poor games and everything like that. But most of those games were relatively close. Melbourne United could have walked away 2-0 in that series, especially after being up by 20 points in front of RAC Arena and the Perth Wildcats and everything like that. But the way that they've played, you mix that with the experience that they've got, you mix that with Dean Vickerman and the trust that I have having him as a coach, I just 100% would say right now that they will win the NBL Championship. Now, if you want a prediction of where it will go, I think it will go to 4 games. I think they knock off the Illawarra Hawks at this particular game in game 2. The Illawarra Hawks will win in front of their home crowd at the WEC in game 3, and Melbourne United go back and win in front of their home crowd in game 4. So it'll be Chris Goulding's 5th NBL Championship, Dean Vickerman's 5th NBL Championship, and I think that's the way that it's going to go down as well. So incredible series coming up, and a cheeky little finals MVP for me. For both of you, Ian Clark. I think he's been the player of the playoffs so far from a consistency standpoint. The way that the Illawarra Hawks are focusing in on Chris Goulding, I know they're still focusing on Ian Clark, but focusing majority on Chris Goulding, Ian Clark's going to have another massive game like he had against the Perth Wildcats, where I think he dropped 38 points as well. So we might not see 38 points, but we'll see a couple of huge games from the experienced, savvy veteran.
Wow, a lot to take in there. Grace, how do you see game 2 playing out, and what will it have for an effect on the series?
For me, I look at how Illawarra bounced back from their loss to Southeast Melbourne Phoenix in game 2. I know the circumstances are different. That was an away game. This is a home game, but I do have faith. The other thing is, with your statistics, Josh, I'd like to point out how you mentioned the last 2 seasons. I think if I'd like to, just focus on recent history, I think we can forget about 2022 and beyond, because no one remembers that far back anyway. So I'm going off what the last 2 seasons have been, and game 1 not necessarily meaning as much. I'd like it to go to 5 games, just so that we can have a home final. I think if it gets to 5 games, the atmosphere down here will be a lot greater than it would be in Melbourne. And I don't know, maybe I am being a bit biased, but I think Illawarra are better over the longer series. We did have them 2-1 through this regular season, and Toddy Blanchfield agrees. He said so in an interview last week, I think it was. Over the 5 games, Illawarra have a greater chance. So I will admit I'm biased, but I'm going to go with Illawarra in 5. I won't put money on it because I don't have.
I don't know. There's a few things. I sit there and I go, all right, we'll just forget about history. Let's forget about the fact that the Illawarra Hawks won a championship 24 years ago before Grace and I were probably born. Let's forget about that first and foremost, and their history and everything leading up to this particular point. Let's forget about history. Let's forget about statistics, all right? If I was to tell you right now, Grace, you have an 8 in 10 chance of winning this series for a stat. Doesn't matter about a year point. Would you take those odds?
Guys, don't call me out like
I'll
that.
answer it for you. 100% you would take an 80% chance, all right? And that is
Yeah.
where I look back and I see statistics. Hey, go on,
What
Ryan. You
Grace
got a little
is,
say as
what
well.
Grace
Come on.
is saying is, though, as the loser of game 1, over the last 2 years, we have a 100% chance of winning the series. Or if you look 3 years, we have a 2 in 3 chance of winning the series. So you and your stats can get out of here and let me know when Perth make the grand final again and we can talk about stats.
Hey, mate, if we want to talk about the past and everything like that, I'll happily sit here with my 10 championship banners that I pretty much witnessed about 6 of them. So I'll happily sit here. We can talk about the past and everything like that. But I am saying right now, grand final statistics, 8 of the last 10 winners have gone to win game 1 and then obviously gone on to win the championship series. So I think I'm going to double down. All right, I'll happily sit here. I'll take $25 off Grace. I'll take $25 off Ryan. I'll take my $50, and I will say that the Melbourne United Basketball Club will win in 4 games this particular season. And I think the Illawarra Hawks. I'm going to go again a bit more. Right, the Illawarra Hawks will falter. They'll have a big game 3, 100% in front of their home crowd. Game 2, they're dead in the water. Game 4, they're dead in the water. Let's leave it right there. Right?
Have you not lost enough money to me this
like
season?
$5.
All right, so I think the narrative is going to be Sam Froling has been a dominant force against Melbourne in the 3 games they've played. I think he'll show up in game 2. I think Trey Kell and Tyler Harvey will have a lot better shooting night. Illawarra are a much better team over the 5-game series. You were right. Melbourne are a consistent team, consistently average. Illawarra are great. They're a great team. They're a full team. They're not... Their future doesn't hang on one guy making extreme shots over somebody's head from 3, or a guy like Marcus Lee playing a career night after being essentially nowhere all season long. Illawarra are a team. That's why a series is 5 games. You get the best team to be the winner at the end of the day, and that's what Illawarra will be. So put it all in. The house is on Illawarra Hawks to win the series. I think it's also going to 5 games. That's what I thought it was from the beginning.
Justin Tatum's more worried about the NBA contracts, mate, and the NBA opportunities. He's lost it. He's on 100% gone. It's just like Benny Henschel right now saying that no one in the NBL can guard him. Well, look what happened to Benny Henschel in the semi-final series. It's not my rumor. That's Matt Logue from Code Sport and everyone like that. There is genuine talk. He said, if an NBA opportunity presents itself, I will 100% think about it. That's where his head is right now. He's thinking, if I win this championship, I'm in the NBA.
Yeah.
100%. But you don't say that during an NBL Championship series. You say that after you've actually achieved something. All right? You say that after. You finish top of ladder. Good on you, mate. But come on, win the championship series and we'll go from there.
Is coach of the year not an achievement enough?
Well, Ryan did ask me a few weeks ago if they don't win the NBL Championship, is this season viewed as a failure? That's where Ryan's head was at a few weeks ago.
I didn't say
that's
that.
Rough.
You took the words and you've twisted them. That's not what I said. Anyway, we've run out of time today, guys. Thank you very much, Grace, for coming on. Don't forget, everybody listening and watching, to subscribe, follow, rate, all of that stuff. Let us know in the comments as well who you think will win this grand final series, if Josh is off his rocker. And if you want to go back to the previous episodes and find out all the Josh bets that he's made, that he owes money to me and Jez, then do that. Save me doing it. TheBasketballFix.com has your free agency tracker, game previews, and the Basketball Fix podcast on Instagram is the best NBL content you can find on Instagram. Guys, thanks again for today. Listeners and viewers, we hope you've gotten your basketball fix.
Force a turnover at halfway. Clock at 10. Adams the off balance. Oh!